All right, so for this video, I wanted to talk about the concept of mental illness from the perspective of the Loosh farm, right? Like, I want to talk about how a lot of like the mental illnesses and a lot of the mental disorders and the problems that people have on this planet, on this realm, can be really easily explained if you look at it from the Loosh farm perspective, right? And I think that this comes in like this comes in like two major flavors that have been two major sort of types that I've been able to find out, or well, just by thinking about it. I think that there are two ways that entities sort of create mental illness in people. Like, the first one is something that I have direct experience with. If you watched that video about my experiences in school, you'll know that there was a time in my life where I had an extreme depression. I had like the like the self-deprecating thoughts, like the mean voice, like the mean inner voice, like the inner critic or whatever, right? Which like, I look back on that time and I realize that it's that anytime you have like self-deprecating thoughts, like you have like self-hating thoughts or whatever, that's actually not you. It's a it's a telepathic entity in the astral plane trying to loose you. And this is why it feels like another entity. It feels like an external entity. And I remember, like, during this period of my life whenever I was in school, and I think because of the fact that I had all this trauma and all this other stuff from bullying, and I was trying to like deal with it. I was like super depressed. I was super in that state of like, oh, I'm so stupid, I'm so small, blah 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 blah, right? And because of the fact that I was in that state of mind, I think that I was very easily loosed. And I think there was also this thing that I remember where I remember listening a lot to Linkin Park a lot. And some of the lyrics that Chester Bennington has in some of like the Linkin Park songs, he talks about like that mean inner voice, that other voice inside the head that sort of criticizes everything you do and calls you stupid for everything you do, right? I definitely had an experience, have had experiences with that sort of it's like an inner monologue, but it's not your inner monologue. That's definitely entity harassment. That's definitely like entity attachment. And so I've experienced that before. I know what it's like to be in a state of being loosed. I know what it's like to be in a state of trauma, right? And for I know what like being loosed feels like, right? And so that's the first variant. So a lot of like the like the depression, the anxiety, and especially like the intrusive thoughts was like another form of this that I experienced, personally, which like along with like the whole self-deprecating thoughts and like the depression, like being sad all the time for no reason, like, which I mean, doesn't that sound really like a really 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 good sort of convenient circumstance for generating loosh, right? Like, if you're an archon entity in the astral plane, doesn't that seem like a really really good environment for you to feed on loosh? It's like, oh, you have someone here who like, oh, you're sad all the time for no reason, and there's no obvious reason for you to be sad, but you're sad all the time for no, like, that sounds like someone's looshing you. That sounds like something is feeding off of your energy, right? It's the same thing with being anxious about everything. It's the same thing with like OCD, where it's like you have like these intrusive thoughts, and like this impending sense of doom. I've also experienced that whenever I was in school, or like whenever I was like little, right? And so I think that it's almost like if you don't climb up and down the stairs 3 times, like your wife's gonna die in a car crash, or if you don't count like the green M&Ms in the bag in 60 seconds, then it's like you're gonna get brain cancer or whatever. It's like that type of stuff is not like that's not like normal. That's not the normal human mind. Like, and that is, yet again, it's the prime environment, and it's not a chemical imbalance. It's not oh, there's something wrong with you. Like, this is like the prime environment in terms of consciousness, in terms of like the mentality that you have. This is the prime environment for generating loosh, right? If you think about if you're an entity in the astral and you have the ability to sort of telepathically interact with people, right? People who aren't aware of their state of consciousness. I think yet again, I've talked about how I've been able to discipline my inner monologue to the point where, like, I don't have any of those self-deprecating thoughts. I don't have any of the intrusive thoughts. So sometimes I have a little bit of intrusive thoughts. Like, sometimes like there's a little bit of that, but I'm able to sort of discipline my inner monologue away from that. Um, you know, because it is very much about self awareness. I think if there's people that aren't aware their own mentality, if they're not aware of this stuff, if they're not aware of like the the entities in the astral being able to sort of plant thoughts into your head, being able to telepathically transmit messages, like yet again, like that mean inner voice, like the inner critic, which is not an inner critic. It's it's an external critic that manifests as a voice inside your head, right? And so I think that like self awareness is a huge part of it, but like a lot of that stuff explains a lot of mental illness when it comes to like being quote unquote depressed, being having quote unquote anxiety, right? Having intrusive thoughts, OCD, like all that kind of stuff. Can definitely be explained in the context of the Loosh farm, and I think that there's also this element to it as well, which is that a lot of your quote unquote depression, it might just be like a completely normal reaction. You look at how soul crushing society is. You look at how anti-human, anti-spirit the world is. You look at the prison planet. You look at how fucked things are in this realm, right? And then like the therapist or whatever, they'll tell you, oh, it's a chemical imbalance and we need to give you a pill. Like, no, you're having you might just be having it like a normal reaction to the prison planet, or you might just you might be homesick for prime reality. That's another thing too. So that's another way that it can come in, is like the therapist will sort of gaslight you into thinking that your reactions, your totally normal and totally healthy reactions to the prison planet are just chemical imbalances, that they're mental illnesses, right? And so that is like another way that it comes in, but like that's like the first category of like quote unquote mental illness in the prison planet, is like you have a lot of these mental illnesses or mental conditions that are sort of manifestations of entities sort of fucking with you in the head, like sort of fucking with you from the astral. And what they're doing is they're trying to manipulate your thoughts into a state of consciousness that it makes it very easy to loosh on you. It makes it very easy for you to be depressed, be sad, be in a state of trauma, be in a state of self-hatred, be in a state of self-pity as well, right? Like playing like the self-pity thing was a huge thing for me that I had to get over, right? That was that was like also a huge thing. That was a huge loose generator, like, oh, like any tiny mistake that I made, like, oh man, you're so stupid, you're this, you're that, like that is not you. If you're experiencing that in the head, like that's not you, that's an entity trying to loose you, trying to feed off of your energy, right? And just looking back on all this, like after learning about the Loosh farm, after learning about the emotional energy harvesting, it does really put that sort of experience that I had as a child really into context, right? But that's the first sort of category of like mental illnesses explained in the context of the Loosh farm, is that they're trying to get you, they're trying to telepathically interact with you and get you in a state where you're easily loosed, you're easily manipulated into negative energy states, so that you can generate that energy that they feed off of. But the second one that I've noticed, this has to do with energy vampires. This has to do with narcissism, like narcissism, psychopathy, sociopathy, bipolar disorder, like all of these disorders, so you have the first category, which is entities trying to feed off of your Loosh directly. But like another way that it manifests is you have people who maybe they have a reduced empathy. Maybe they have, maybe they've repressed their empathy as a trauma response. But these are people who are narcissistic. These are people who are very easily possessed by demonic entities. You have people who are narcissistic, people who like they move in the direction of only caring about themselves, or maybe they experienced a lot of trauma as a child, and so like they've sort of lost that ability to feel empathy as they've grown older. Or maybe they've voluntarily repressed empathy, as a way of sort of putting the walls up, protecting themselves. I think a lot of the the people in the bloodlines that run the world, I think they do go through MK Ultra, Monarch, sort of mind control, trauma rituals. Like a lot of celebrities go through humiliation rituals. They go, if you look at like the Black Eye Club, like a lot of these celebrities, they get like punched in the eye as a sort of initiation into whatever, right? And so but in either case, like a lot of like this second category of mental illness has to do with basically entities possessing people so that they can generate Loosh from the people around them. And this is where you get into like the energy vampires. This is where you get into like the narcissists that target you for no reason, because what's happening is that these people, whether they might be NPCs, they might be Agent Smiths, right? Like these people, they get possessed by the Matrix or whatever. But it might also be just people who are especially narcissistic, people who are, especially, with reduced empathy. And so like they match the, the frequency, of a reptilian. They match, the frequency of a demon or an archon. And so what they do is they enter into people, and what they do is they possess these people because they have access to other people that they can loosh, right? And so this is where you get like the, yet again, the energy vampires, the bullies, the narcissists that, like they target you in order to, generate loosh, right? So and what's interesting is that I've seen this a lot. Like a lot of the people that have targeted me, in school, for example, right? These are people who, whenever I observe their behavior from a distance, these are people who they would they would be otherwise normal people, except when they're around me for some reason. It's almost like I've seen it doesn't happen with every bully, it doesn't happen with every person, but like these people, like it's almost like they turn into a completely different person, whenever they go into, loosh harvesting mode, right? And so I do think that, this second category of mental illness, of, narcissistic personality, of bipolar disorder, of, psychopath is being psychopaths, being sociopathic in nature. I think this can be explained by, just essentially entities being, what these entities do is they find people that are especially easy to possess. And these people that are easy to possess, these people that, are the most, resonant with their frequency, their low, their sort of low frequency, low, I guess you could say, like the evil frequency, like they're the most, like they're the best match for the evil frequency. And so like they're the most easily possessed, by entities, right? These entities find these people, and what happens is that they possess these people in order to loosh the people around them. Maybe you have like this one person who, is surrounded by people who are very emotional. Maybe they're surrounded by nice people, right? But then you have the narcissistic person there that, it's almost like these entities are like, oh my gosh, it's right there. Like if I, fuck with this person that's right next to them, like they'll generate a lot of loosh. Or maybe if, if I say this thing in order to shut this person down, they'll generate a lot of loosh. And so that is another, element that I notice, whenever it comes to the loosh harvesting, um, you know, explaining mental illness, right? Like mental disorders or whatever, explaining like the DSM-5 stuff, in the context of the Loosh farm, is that it comes in that second category of, people who are easily possessed, and then like you have people who are easily looshed, and they have people who are easily possessed in order to loosh the people around them through that empty vessel. Right, I do think that a lot of these empty vessels are in positions of power. You look at the politicians, you look at the billionaires, the CEOs, right? A lot of these people, they come from bloodlines, right? That where, they intentionally traumatize their children in order to make them more controllable. They go through the MK Ultra Monarch programming, right? They go through, a lot of this stuff, right? And it makes me think of, in particular, it makes me think of Elon Musk. Or like Elon Musk talks about a lot of the bullying that he experienced as a kid, where he got beat up so bad that he got sent to the hospital, right? And you look at, Elon Musk's dad being, an asshole, right? And it makes me think, like, what if Elon getting bullied as a kid was like his trauma ritual to make Elon more controllable? And you look at, people like Elon Musk, they care a lot about the approval of the people around them, and maybe that's one of the reasons why they did this. Maybe that's one of the reasons why they, they do these trauma rituals, is because it makes them easy to control by like, oh, but you need to look for approval, right? And if you do this, you'll become famous. We'll make you famous. We'll make all these people like you. And I think that this is where we get into celebrities, right? A lot of these when it comes to celebrities, I don't think every celebrity comes from a bloodline necessarily. I do think that, some celebrities are, they're found by people, and maybe they're, especially talented, but also maybe they find people who are especially easy to sort of mold into icons, mold into, people who are, stars in the industry, right? And so they're very easily controlled, or they're just extremely talented, right? And then, of course, whenever they get too, aware, they kick them out or whatever. It's like these people. It makes me think of like Prince. It makes me think of, Michael Jackson, right? Like the people who are too aware or too awake, like it's either they die early or they get, kicked out of the industry, and called crazy or whatever. But when it comes to, celebrities, I do think, there's a reason why they also go through the humiliation rituals, the trauma rituals, in order to get into, like a high position in the industry. And then, of course, you look at, people like Harvey Weinstein, molesting people, on the Hollywood sets, right? It's almost like, and you look at the P. Diddy stuff also, where it's like you have to, do these sexually humiliating acts in order to, get this movie role, in order to, guarantee an Oscar or whatever. I definitely think that that stuff happens as well. Right, but whenever it comes to, just generally speaking, like a lot of like the so-called mental illnesses, a lot of the so-called mental disorders that people experience in this prison planet, I think a lot of that can be really easily and very concisely explained, if you look at it in the context of the Loosh farm. If you look at it in the context of Loosh, right, like yet again, there's two categories. You have people who are easily looshed, which is, these are the people that, they get, fucked with by entities inside their head in order to be depressed, anxious. They have the OCD, they have the intrusive thoughts, they have the constant, impending sense of doom, which generates that low vibrational energy that they feed off of. But then you have, the second variety, which is you have like the narcissists, you have the psychopaths, you have the people who are very easily possessed, right? And what they do, what these entities do, is they possess those people in order to be, a menace, in order to aggravate the people around them, in order to generate loosh through that empty vessel. And these empty vessels are in the highest positions of power. The people who are the billionaires, the people who are the most famous, the people who are the most recognized, the people who are in, these political positions of power. These are essentially empty vessels that have been, they've been traumatized, humiliated, they've been through, mind control rituals, MK Ultra, Monarch, whatever, in order to become empty vessels. Because of course, if you were an entity race running things from the astral, running things from the unseen realms, of course you would want, like your elite class of people, like your elite, the elite group of people that run everything. You would want them to be easily controlled and easily possessed, right? So that you can sort of, it makes you think of, if you've ever played Lego Star Wars, you know how like you can transfer your player character to like the different characters inside of the video game, right? It's almost like that, where it's I think that, these entities value people who are especially easy to possess. They value people who are, very much like them, psychopathic. Maybe they have repressed empathy, whatever. Since like they're the ones that are easy to control, like video game characters from the astral, so that they can maintain their control, right? But yeah, I think that that is just, just a little rant, I guess, about, whenever I think of mental illness, whenever I think of, mental disorders like, depression, anxiety, OCD, intrusive thoughts and all this other stuff, like the inner critic, like the mean inner voice or whatever, right? If you think about this from the context of the Loosh farm of emotional energy harvesting by negative entities, it all starts to make sense. What these mental disorders are, what these, mental what these mental illnesses are, right? But yeah, that's the video.